There's a little garage on a small town street. I like to meet my friends there every week, and I know we'll talk about some facts and things, history and science and some crazy shit. Talking it out with Alan, Ben, and Nick, and I know that it's gonna be a weird-ass show. Ooh, insanity abounds. Ooh, the world is spinning round. Now we're gonna break it down. Informed and Confused. I'm Ben.
I'm Alan.
And I'm Nick.
Today we're going to be talking about the last major pandemic to hit the world back in 1918, which now is known colloquially as the Spanish flu.
Oh, it was known as that back then, but for way more racist-y reasons.
For the same reason the current one is known as the China flu.
Well, no.
The racist-y reasons.
There's parallels.
There's definite
parallels.
Most of the reason it was called the Spanish flu was because at the time Spain was not involved with World War I, and so their reporters were a little more freely giving information, and then their king came down with it.
Yeah, so that's the first place people really heard about it actually happening.
Yeah. Well, and they were the ones that reported the worst numbers because they were reporting honest numbers. All of the countries involved in the war at the time were kind of suppressing that information so as not to panic.
They weren't reporting on it at all at that point. It was completely kept under the rug, or otherwise just not paid attention to.
And this affected absolutely everybody. Like, guess who? My most favorite human being to inhabit the world at that point in time.
Elron?
No.
Oh.
No. Elron was around. You're
I
right.
know he was.
You're right. He's a little mop of red hair and freckles right now and so adorable.
In China or becoming a blood brother of Indians?
No, he's learning lumberjack fighting skills from his grandfather right now. No, Walt Disney.
Really?
Yeah. It actually delayed him being sent to the war and basically kept him out of fighting.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Walt actually regarded the flu as being the nastiest thing he ever had to deal with in his life. And, like, to my understanding, he did make it to Europe for combat very, very briefly and then got sent home because he was tremendously goddamn sick. But, yeah, no, he says the sickness was the worst thing that ever happened in his life. Well, presumably until his parents died, because after that tended to fill up some time in question and interviews.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
weird how he doesn't talk about the wars.
He didn't really do much. He enlisted super duper late, and again, he was very, very sick for the
Well, like you say,
he spent something like 6 months laid up with this. Like, he was sick.
Yeah.
But he did live through another world war.
He did.
And I don't believe he really talks about much of anything there.
Was he in the army in the Second War?
No.
I don't know.
No, he was out of the service by the Second War, and there's conflicting reports as to where Disney's loyalties were in the 1940s. I am personally of the opinion...
He had some pretty extreme views.
I am of the opinion he got a few too many European animators out to call him a Nazi or even a Nazi sympathizer. Still think he was a gross human being. Just because he went to a Passover Seder...
we are in the intro and we are already way off topic. So...
we knew we were going to get there.
Technically, this counts as my Godwin. I got Nazis out of the way.
True.
All right.
And because Ben did research, Ben wants to share the one other bit of knowledge he actually brought to this table. I started getting into it with the fact that we know it now as the Spanish flu, but in terms of what it actually was, it was the H1N1, or Heine, or what we know from 2009 to be the swine flu.
No, it was
a variant of.
Swine flu is different.
Swine flu was H1N1.
H1N1 is not a single thing. It's a category of virus.
Same as Corona is a category, but...
They believe this came from avian flu. At least
I will.
that's what
I will
it's
get
a
in.
relative
We can get into this. Well, I might as well just. Is that is the first thing I have?
Yeah. I thought it was a relative of.
Let him.
It's an H1 a variant of H1N1. Because you remember, viruses mutate all the time, so there's always different variants and strains and all that.
And if I remember correctly, influenza is one of the fastest mutating diseases. Like, I believe Ebola is the only one that technically changes quicker.
There's a reason we need a flu shot every year.
Yeah, that is one of the reasons why.
It changes rapidly.
Extremely.
And you're right. The H1N1 variant, virus variant, is a avian-based thing, although that doesn't mean it always comes from birds.
Just the research I had done had suggested that the most likely candidate is a mutation from avian flu, and to my understanding, they're not 100% sure where it actually started.
That is true, and we'll get into that. Yeah, it's an avian flu, but that doesn't mean it came from a bird when it got into humans. That's a different thing.
My money's on Chinese migrant laborers in Canada.
Again, we'll get
get
to
there.
that. Yeah, you guys are just. But one interesting.
Informed and confused slogan: "We'll get there."
That's gotta be a shirt.
That's my personal catchphrase.
It's gotta be a shirt.
Whenever we said
I
it's
think
always
you're the
me.
one that says it the most.
I always say that.
That's because he and I like
We
to
all say
jump
it.
ahead.
We all say anytime one of us comes to this table with a pile of notes, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Because none of us are idiots. I mean, we're all idiots, but none of us are idiots.
Yeah. No, but yeah. In particular, there's we talk about its relation to other things. There's another categorization of influenza viruses. Specifically, you can break down it's either A, B, or C.
Right, I've heard those designations before.
This one is a type A. I believe most of the more lethal ones are type A. Pretty much, if you trace them back, in some way or another, pretty much all cases, not all, but almost all cases of influenza A viruses that you have going on today, which I think includes like the swine flu, are in some way descended from the H1N1 1918-1919 virus.
Oh, okay.
It's also important to note this has the highest death toll of any global disease. This puts everything to shame.
Okay, so I was still correct in connecting the swine flu and the Spanish flu. It's just the swine flu is the great-great-grandchild of the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
Kind of. That is a way to contextualize it.
Yeah, it's kind of like if we were talking about Americans fighting in Vietnam and you were talking about like 1700s colonial militia. The guy might be his great
similarities.
That guy might be his great grandfather, but it wasn't him.
There's still dudes in the jungle going click click fucking whitey.
Well, and that was kind of where guerrilla warfare got its start in colonial. Yeah, that was when they stopped doing the march into a battlefield and meet each other on lines.
When we get to the stage of colonialism where they start using cheaper local soldiers rather than the imported forces that they used to dominate.
I know the point you're making. Words being specific. Guerrilla wars have been waged well before the age of imperialism.
You're right,
yes.
But yes,
but the
that
form
is when
that we know them as started.
Yes, that was when
very much built
guerrilla
on.
war started to become a predominant form of conflict in the over lines of troops and stuff.
It's like when you talk about industrialized warfare, World War I is where that line starts. Was war still similar before then? Well, yeah.
War is always similar. One group is trying to kill the other group, while that group tries not to be killed and kills the other group.
Usually, you're looking at either the Crimean War or the American Civil War as the start of industrial warfare. Usually, the Civil War.
There's an argument for the Civil War, but I feel it's a little too much flintlock and musket action.
Only at the beginning.
I know. By the end, it was a very
The
different
battle
beast.
of the
I'm
battle
well
of
aware.
yeah, the Battle of Petersburg
No,
was a trench warfare
I'm
battle.
aware that repeating rifles were invented then. I'm aware that cased ammunition became a standardized thing. I get it. But
I would argue that it could go all the way back to the Napoleonic Wars and the war machines that he put into practice there and the cannon.
That's
and
a little
everything.
far back.
This has
Yeah.
nothing to do with
it.
the flu.
Yeah.
We're getting good at this.
We are fucking nerds.
We are the masters of getting off topic.
Nailing it.
Content. Preem content. Available nowhere else. Because no one will buy it.
All right. So that's kind of the lineage of this virus. We know kind of how it's classified, what it's related to. The symptoms of the disease itself are basically the flu. Dry hacking cough, loss of appetite, sweats, stomach issues. For most people who got it, you had a fever for about 3 to 5 days, and you got over it. Most people, it was like a bad flu. Yeah. The thing that makes it different than other flus,
young, healthy folks, mid to late 20s especially.
I want to say the hardest hit group was between the teens and like 35. It was the core young Americans.
3 groups: people under 5, people between ages of approximately 20 to 40, and people over 65 are the groups of people that hit hardest.
Okay.
See, and 5 and under just makes sense because everything's worse on little kids.
Yeah. The 5 and under, the 65 and older, that
makes
typical.
Sense.
That's expected.
It was weird that it hit the middle age.
Yeah, the 20 to 40. That's the weird thing.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, but I really took away from this is this virus is largely mysterious. There's a lot of shit about it that people just don't understand or get.
Well, medical knowledge was not what it is today.
Even today.
Germ theory wasn't fully accepted when this started.
Well, no, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about modern research they've done on actual samples of the virus recovered.
We need me plugged in bad.
We're trying out some new video software this week and hardware, so bear with us, folks. Yeah. The joys of finally being on video. Speaking of which, if you haven't found us yet, right there at the corner, the strip. If you haven't found us yet, we are now on YouTube, so go check us out there. Just search for Informed and Confused, and you'll find us. And you can watch us not only talking the fool, but acting the fool as well.
Yes. Okay.
I bumped it with the cord. This is my fault.
As you can tell, we are true professionals.
Oh, absolutely consummate.
Well, yeah, we have this great studio. It's not a garage. It's definitely not a garage. It's a studio. These space blankets are for sound quality.
I mean, actually, they do kind of do that fairly well because of the reflective surface based on the soft of the rest of the room.
Well, that helps with lighting,
yeah.
Although because we're all exceptionally pale. Like, we may want to start putting on foundation because we look like fucking ghosts.
That'll also help once we change from a fluorescent lamp to more of a warm light, which I am working on.
We need a diffuser. That's really all it is.
All right.
But back
I'm sure
to the
they'd
flu.
love to hear about our technical talk, but
back to the flu.
Actually, a lot of viewers and listeners really love to know what type of gear people are using. That's an entire subset of podcast listeners.
But we can get into that in other discussions.
Right,
Today is the flu.
Yes, but the thing that makes this thing unique is, of course, its lethality. This thing had a lethality rate of 2.5%.
To put
For
that in
comparison,
context,
I'm not quite sure how that drops in
Corona's,
context.
if it's the correct number that I'm referencing here, Corona is at just a 0.5, I do believe.
I think it's like a 0.2 or 0.3.
Okay.
At most, it's at a 0.5
the
lethality
average
rate, and this
the number
was
I have
at
for
2.5.
the number I have for averages is 0.1.
Okay.
The average flu is a 0.1.
0.5 is what I saw based on the U.S. average.
That wouldn't make sense given that this is more. Corona is more lethal than normal flu. why it's a problem.
Okay.
If it's less than a 0.1, that would be weird.
I may be getting confused.
Or either that, or I
may
have
be
drastically wrong
confusing
numbers.
sources, and I apologize for even muddying the water.
You can tell we are awesome at our research.
I did research. I came prepared to have an informed discussion because the specific subset I had ended up being way too analogous to modern life to try and draw goddamn differences.
Actually, now that I
and
think
now
about
we're all
it,
confused.
now that I think about it, and again, this is based on, I haven't heard the numbers in a while. I think Corona is actually closer to that number, like to like a 2% or something like that. I think
I mean, at least in the
I
U.S.
think the
it
difference
appears to be.
I think the difference comes in when you deal with the medical technology.
Okay, I'm going off of what sources directly said to me. I'm not great at parsing medical information, so I'm
Yeah.
parroting right now.
It's up there. I know when I've seen the numbers for Corona, it's up there along with Spanish flu.
Unlike Donald John Trump, I don't have any doctors in my family history, so this stuff's not in my blood. I don't just know it.
Anyways, but but still, that's your comparison there for the averages. It's 2.5 over a 0.1, much more lethal than
very lethal
compared to a normal influenza. That's 20. That's 25 out of 1,000 instead of 1 out of 1,000.
Yeah.
We don't know why. Even today, they don't know what made it more lethal, and they have actual samples of the virus they've gotten out of like frozen bodies and shit like that they've actually got in labs. So they have the virus that they're working with that they can use modern technology on, which is how they some of the stuff I'll talk about.
Which is why we have what details we have.
Yeah,
I feel like it's got to be some kind of genetic level anomaly to the population at the time.
whatever it is, they don't. And most of the information I got here, I got off the CDC website. So
well, and I'm trying to think. 1918.
I used a lot of European sources because, like, I tried comparing it to like current pandemic stats, and I don't trust anything out of the U.S. right now.
In 1918, how prolific were vaccines and stuff like that?
not very.
They existed, but at that point in time, the anti-vaxxer movement was much different and actually based in relatively rational concerns, especially because the earliest versions of vaccines, the things that actually bred anti-vaxxer culture, were things like powdered scabs, or like, have you ever seen those nail applicators where it's like 50 needles to rough the skin?
Yeah.
And then they'd rub a bit of diseased mucus or blood into the wound to expose you. That could leave scars. That could leave secondary infections that would be absolutely lethal.
Early vaccines could kill you.
Yeah,
just as easily as the disease itself.
Early
so at the time, there was an
were
actual legitimate concern.
Early anti-vaxxers were mildly.
Now, by early, are we talking like after the Black Plague? Are we talking about our 1900s?
Your earliest vaccines are probably the earliest I've ever seen a vaccine in anything would be in the Revolutionary era, late 1700s. I don't know exactly how much farther back than that it goes, but I know it goes back.
If you want to talk like ancient Chinese medicine, it goes to something like 600 AD.
Yeah, but and again, like that, like the thing I've seen with like the 1700s is like for smallpox.
Yeah,
you take the wound on a person.
And you rub it into your own.
Cut your arm and stick it in there.
The methods I'm talking about would have been discovered around the 1600s, in practice by the 1700s, scared of before the end of that century, and mildly
still 100
justified.
years or so after that.
Yeah,
though.
Mildly justified. Could the vaccine save you? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It could also kill you, and it was a genuine role of the time.
We're talking.
Okay, so in the early 1900s, where we're talking about here, you didn't go to the doctor, get a shot, and you're good.
No.
Yeah.
That wasn't
They
the
were
vaccine
just
process at the time.
The idea of germs and all that was just starting to become a science.
Germ
in its
theory
infancy.
had been proposed, but it was not widely accepted yet. The Spanish influenza is actually one of the big reasons why it caught on, because it helped explain it so cleanly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you also have to remember, like, 100 years ago, science was at least 2/3 bullshit.
No,
you have to remember that.
We have gone through a boom in scientific discovery in the last 100 years.
You're on the cusp here. You're on the cusp here. I would say when we were born 100 years ago, science was largely just starting to not be bullshit. 100 years now, 30 years on, the early 20th century.
1900, would you agree with my 2/3 assessment?
Einstein is doing a lot of his early work right now. So, things like relativity and all that. So, we're not like Dark Ages stuff. They're not still doing.
You're not wrong,
bleeding
but it
people.
is a case of there's still a lot of things that are commonly held as a scientific view that are just blatantly wrong. That like a grade schooler now would know is blatantly
but that,
wrong.
my point is that comes less from ignorance of methodology and simply a matter of lack of time to do the research yet.
You have to discover shit eventually. Like you can't expect everyone to know everything. If that were the case, there'd be nothing new for us to be going after.
People were actually doing actual science to learn shit.
No.
I think if we look back at history, it's not about the progress of science, but the direction in which it took. I mean, Newton figured out gravity.
How
go
long
back
was it before anyone conquered gravity?
Or understood the actual mechanics of it.
Right.
And
the
even
point
today,
is,
we don't have a full understanding
humanity
of it.
has always been yearning to learn and understand.
Oh, yeah, and
all the way back to, the ancient Greeks and stuff.
I view that as
the direction we've succeeded in changes from time to time.
Yeah, no, I actually view that as one of the more optimistic things about us as a species. We keep pushing. We keep finding something new.
We yearn to know more.
No matter how much we think we know, there's always something else. That's
in
kind
pockets,
of optimistic.
In pockets, that is a universal application of human culture. Is a relatively new thing.
There have definitely been times when the rate has plateaued.
It's one of those things. Just because we found something once doesn't mean it can't be lost. We have no idea how Damascus steel was made. That's going to be a fun mystery.
We have no idea how the pyramids were made.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we do.
That's been figured out.
Or at least they have theories. I don't know.
They have theories.
They've proven it.
I saw a thing where somebody did a full-scale test with a sandstone block and managed to move it across desert sand.
They proof that it can be done that
concept,
way.
They
not
don't know if
that
that's how it was done.
They did do it that way. That's the difference.
I choose to believe.
That's probably how they did it.
Well, and
My
that's
point
what it is. It's belief, not fact. We think we have an idea. It's a theory.
Theory.
Yes.
Science deals in theory, not facts.
They found a way to do it.
They still have theories about Damascus steel. They haven't been able to do it yet.
Darwin is a theory, despite how accepted.
All right, now we're getting way off topic.
Flu.
I'm like on bullet point 2 here, and we're.
Well, then wrangle us in. You know what you're dealing with.
Do I need to get you a lightsaber?
Yeah, I know what I'm dealing with, which is why I'm not trying to wrangle you in.
Stick knife's right over there, buddy. There's a hacksaw right there, too.
If I have to break out the stick knife, though, then I'm going to be a podcast of one, and that's not going to be any fun. So, I got to.
He thinks he can take us both.
I got to balance these things.
I'm not saying you won't get lucky, and I'm not saying I won't miss you, but.
All right, let's be honest. If I, honest to God, actually tried to stab one of you, you would both be so in shock that I actually tried to do it. That would give me my opening. I don't think either of you one of you would truly believe I could ever do anything.
Also, I don't think he'd actually kill us with the stick knife. It would be the tetanus we got from it.
I think me and you are both conditioned enough to grab the wrist and not the knife, though. I think both of us would.
Actually, the knife is only the first, 5 inches of it, so long as you get past that.
He's right. All I got to do is cut you. Once I cut you, you're dead.
Hey, we all die eventually.
Speaking of dying...
some people died from flu in the 1919s,
right? Turning blue and choking on their internal fluids,
Although, actually, a lot of people who died in the pandemic didn't actually die strictly of the flu itself, but due to secondary infection or pneumonia.
Was a big one.
Pneumonia.
Okay.
I had pneumonias as a little kid. I had the type that's supposed to kill you. Pneumonia is fucking awful.
Oh, yeah.
I've never dealt with it.
We already kind of talked about this idea of who is mostly targeted. We said the under 5, over 65,
age demographics.
20 to 40. With the 2040 being the big weird one, most influences don't target healthy people like that.
That's
who have no
generally the
underlying
healthiest
conditions.
we are in our lifetime.
Yeah, no, the bulk of my research, I'll point out, like, people in their late 20s, early 30s, just dropping like flies.
Yeah. Which they kind of point out, it produces a W curve in the mortality rates. Normally,
you've got a couple of drop points mid-early and mid-late, and everyone else is dying.
Yeah, normally you have the U curve, the young people and the old people, but here you've got a W because you got that group of young.
Kind of a spike in the middle,
Spike in the middle. So they call it a W curve. The one theory we had was they said people born before the date was 1889 may have been infected with another virus they had, a viral outbreak that existed earlier, and that could have influenced.
That could have weakened their.
Could have influenced their. He found evidence that said weaken. I found evidence that said strengthen their immunity.
Depending on how
it's
your
a case of prior flu exposure affecting the infection rates.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah, when you survive the flu, you build antibodies, things like that. It would make sense that if they had came down with it earlier, they'd have some sort of increased
Even
antibodies.
back then, just regional flus still mutated the same way they do now. Like, it was still an annual issue.
Yeah.
I will say people born prior to 1889, that would mean people 30 and up. So that would fit in the latter half of that category of people who were highly affected by it. So that leans more towards what he found. And even then, that's just a theory.
Yeah.
It's not.
Also, we're not experts on researching or anything. Like, we're just doing our best.
Yeah. Like the sites I got off, the sites I found this on, which is the CDC and some stuff that linked from that, they went into much deeper explanations of this, going into scientific stuff that none of us understand. That there are reasons why these theories they're out there, but they all have problems.
Okay.
If that was the case, then this would be a thing, which is why none of them have been labeled as, well, that's what it is.
Right.
Because for every theory they come up with, there's a reason.
There's still holes.
There's still holes in it, yeah. Interesting enough, it also, one other group other than humans that were infected with this were swine. Different types of swine. Although it did not go, like the swine flu, it didn't go from them to us. We infected them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pigs caught it from us.
Usually when a disease makes a species jump, it's very rare for it to jump back over.
Yeah.
Even just doing cross-species jumps is rare. It's not a common trick.
Although in this case, it's not a crossing back over because the pigs didn't have it in the first place. But we got it from somewhere else.
No, my point is we didn't get it back from the pigs.
Oh, yeah. No, but
that's just an incredibly rare trait. See, that's why I was so confused with the corona shit about the mutated strain amongst the minks. It was like, okay, even though they've got a weird strain, they got a weird strain. They're a different order of mammalia. There's no evidence it's gonna jump. No evidence it wasn't gonna either, but
most of the time with viruses, I'm pretty sure there's no evidence it's gonna jump until it does.
Right.
It's just that kind of thing.
It's a complete unknown if and when it's going to jump species.
It's a random evolutionary mutation.
Fair point.
Yeah. So, the origins of it, as we said before, it did not actually start in Spain. That's just the first place it was publicly recorded as being in. So people naturally, and because people, don't have the heavy investigation reporting like they do today to tell people that that's not where it actually started. That's just what everybody thought, and it stuck.
And let's face it, racism is timeless.
I'm not sure where you're coming on that, because we're talking Spain, not like Latin America.
Everyone has somebody who's racist against them.
Spanish weren't considered white people in Europe.
Very true.
And
the French and the English have a lot of reason to not like Spain if you look at their history going back.
It's not just the English, though. We're talking.
No, it's not just the French and English, but I mean, at one time, everyone in Europe was at war with everyone else. there was a lot of hate going around. And some of that still exists even today.
Well,
Yeah, but it's mostly looked past and funneled into soccer hooliganism.
Very
Yeah.
true. It's evolved since then.
No. Mostly it was the whole the reporting thing. That is where it comes from.
My personal favorite theory as to where the origins on this came from was Chinese contracted labor workers to
Transported
the,
across
Canadian
Canada to the battlefield, yes.
Well, my theory isn't that they brought it over with them from China. It's that they got exposed to a strain of flu that they were just blatantly unprepared for. Regional diseases and shit.
While passing through Canada.
And then it mutated amongst them because it's a brand new gene pool. And then from there, it became what it was. That is my running theory.
I never saw any evidence of anything like that. The closest thing I would see there is another theory that it originated, at least in outbreak form, in certain American military camps.
I had seen that.
If that somehow got infiltrated its way up to Canada, and they got it that way, and that's how it got to Europe. But that's...
I had also seen
a
one
little
about a
far-fetched.
possible origin in China where it actually wiped out a small community about 10 years prior.
I believe I heard something about...
Yeah, I'm not huge on that one, though.
The odds are... The only... in terms of actual geographic location of where it would have started, actually emerged, China is the leading candidate, although there is no proof of that, just because that tends to be where H1N1 kind of lives.
Yeah.
But...
It's its habitat.
And the Chinese worker thing.
Yeah.
It makes sense that if it would have moved from there to Europe. But obviously the biggest thing is World War I is going on. At some point, whether it's the American military camps or in Europe, or there's another theory somewhere in France, I believe, was another possible starting point. It got to the soldiers. And
you have enough soldiers in an area together from a lot of different places. Yeah,
well, they're all dealing with malnutrition and poor
blood
health.
going everywhere.
There's multiple traces back to military forces, usually with anecdotal stories that lead back to somebody prepping food.
Yeah, well, then you have them all constantly rotating on and off the front lines, them all going back home for a while.
The fact that the trenches were
around.
just a cesspool to begin with.
Yeah.
They're immunocompromised.
Yeah, you don't get out of
It
the
didn't
trench
help.
to use the bathroom.
It didn't help that early onset of the flu already looked like other conditions that were common in the trenches.
Yep.
And they just treated it like a trench flu or regular flu.
Well, treating trench sicknesses was basically, try to take a Jerry with you.
There is also some...
Have some whiskey.
Yeah,
Get back out there.
There was also some evidence that there might have been cases similar to this as early as 1915. But the problem with that is, if that was the case, why did it take so long to cause an outbreak?
Right.
I also heard theories that it mutated multiple times across the stretch that we were aware of it, where it went dormant for a brief period. Like, there's a lot of weird theories floating around about this because it was just it was an aberrant manifestation.
Yeah. We also.
Well, and I know at least after the initial major outbreak, it seemed to kind of be leveling off there a bit, and then a second
Briefly.
wave hit.
Very, very briefly.
Yeah. Again. Now I don't want to say it. We've made the comment.
You have to, though.
We'll get to that.
Will you say it when I come to you with a shirt that says it?
No, he'll just have to wear it every time we record, so he can just be like, guys.
Yeah, but also when they kind of trace it back as to where did humans get it from, it doesn't look like we got it directly from birds. It doesn't look like the virus originally originated in human beings, that it mutated from something we already had, or from pigs.
So we're not sure how.
So any
we
of the
got
three
it.
big carriers, doesn't look like it came from.
I have a new theory, and it could possibly explain its incredible lethality.
Aliens.
Time-traveling tourists. They didn't get their vaccinations before they left. They just lied to the Port Authority. They wanted to tour pre-industrial military camps and see how things were done before they were using the big guns. And oh no.
Obviously, it was the aliens that started the Nazi Party.
Just to be clear, that's the Not-See Party.
Very important distinction.
Right.
I love that movie. Kevin Smith can do no wrong.
But as we said, when the virus hit, it happened in 3 major waves. Although I've seen some sources list a 4th small
I
follow-up
thought
wave.
what I read said 4 waves, but
There were
there's
things
some
I
sources.
saw saying that it never fully burned out.
Its pattern of infection is weird, which is one of the weird things about it. The first wave officially was spring summer 1918. Second wave, which is generally regarded as the worst of the 3, summer to fall of 1918, and the third wave, which was not as bad as the second, but still pretty bad.
winter.
Winter from 1918 into 1919. Again, I saw some evidence of a possible small 4th little blip of a wave after that, but not every source lists it as a thing. Most of them just list a 3rd wave.
Well, and I'm sure a lot of what tapered off the 3rd wave was the fact that it was winter and they didn't have the heating we have these days. I'm
I
sure
think it's
people
everyone put
didn't,
on goddamn scarves covering their mouths and lowered primary transmission rates.
Also, the war was over by then. The armies were going home, so
That had a big
lots
part
of
of it
things
too.
that had effect.
yeah.
Although
Um,
sending folks home also had a effect of spreading it back into
True.
their home countries.
But it stopped the mechanism of people rotating.
oh yeah,
back
no,
and forth.
yeah.
It let it start becoming local issues.
Easier to stamp out that
Now,
way.
the fact that these peaks were so close together,
Yeah, that's exceedingly rapid compared to what we're dealing with now.
led to the question of was this actually the same disease in all 3 waves?
Oh, could it have mutated?
Well, not even a mutation, but because normally if you have a wave where it's peaking and it's going down because they didn't have any vaccines. There it is.
Right.
Is the word. Vaccines for this thing ever. They never came up with a vaccine for it. So it was always
it was
had
herd immunity.
it had to burn itself out. Well, if it just burned itself out because of herd immunity, how did it just all of a sudden start
Up again. Yeah,
up
it
again
had to have changed
simultaneously?
to somehow defeat that herd immunity.
Yeah, it had to change or something. And one possible theory was that it was a different.
But through the entirety of it, it was the same symptoms, the same
Basically, yeah, except
timeline.
for the idea of the first one was very, very mild.
Second
but
one was
yeah.
really bad, and
flu
then
symptoms
got
are
milder.
And the
again.
thing is, flu symptoms are not exactly a unique set of symptoms.
Oh,
A
true.
lot of diseases present very similar to the flu. The weird thing is, though, are the sample, because I said before we have samples of the actual virus.
Right.
We only have samples that originate from the second wave.
Ah.
We do not have any samples of the illness from the 1st or 3rd waves. So until they could ever find samples from the 1st or 3rd waves, we'll never actually be able to know for sure whether or not it was in
Start
fact the
digging in
actual
Alaska.
same thing.
Them mountains is lousy with corpses.
But
Just check for the ones that ain't been eaten by the bears.
Yeah, as long as there's bits left, you can get tissue samples.
right.
No, because that means they were killed by the bear, not the flu.
So that's kind of the basic
Still been
description.
carrying it.
That's the basic description of the actual disease itself. Now we talk about how do people actually deal with this? What was the actual reaction?
I'm
to
trying
it?
to remember 1918, second half of the first war. Who was president then? Was that
Wilson
okay?
in
That
the
was
U.S. would be
Wilson.
Woodrow Wilson.
I imagine he would have gone on the radio and made announcements and pushed people to take, a lot of the same steps we're being encouraged to take: masks, separation.
Initially, we're not talking about initially, which is what you got to talk about here.
Oh, right. 'Cause
the government
they weren't reporting it; they were trying to suppress it.
and you got to remember also just they didn't have the CDC where they could take this virus with this thing looks like this might be something new, stick it under a lab thing, and find out exactly what it is and what it's related to.
Okay, so we
They
There
didn't
didn't
were
do shit
people
like that.
working on it in isolation, but that's just it. In
we
isolation.
didn't have
Yeah.
a government official group of medical.
There was no shared pool of resources on this.
Okay,
At
This
least
was
initially.
different people working in the dark.
gotcha.
Individuals who started to notice things at different locations, like the guys at the army camps in the U.S. when it broke there, obviously noticed
Talk to each
a
other.
shit ton of guys are dying. They reported to their superiors, and their superiors didn't register the significance of it right away because they're not doctors. They're dealing with a war. They've got other shit going
Yeah,
on.
they pushed it to the back burner.
Right. It wasn't until later on with the second, until it became undeniably in your face
Yeah.
that everybody started to pay attention to it. It was, you had a very lack of either disbelief or just lack of concern early on from the government officials. You also had to remember, war on, most of the doctors were all at the
On
front
the other
fighting.
yeah.
There weren't anywhere near enough doctors back home to work on
Okay.
this. In fact, when they actually when it started to blow up, they started to basically having to take med students who hadn't even finished their school
And
yet
send them straight
and,
to
and
the
start
front.
putting them out there as doctors.
Actually, a
to do
weird
it.
story of successful government intervention. There were huge government grants offered to expand nursing training programs at the time. Net gain for everybody. Huge government spending never gets talked about, and it shocks me that no one ever talks about it.
Well, I'm sure we'll get into that more in our other episodes discussing World War I specifically.
Possible, yeah,
But definitely worth mentioning here as it applies.
Huh.
yeah. So
okay,
This
so
is part of the reason
Yeah.
they had med students to pull in from, because even before this, it was a very niche field. There was a huge expansion of medical professionals at the start of the 1900s, as entirely because the government started being like, wow, we really need enough medical professionals to actually service this country. Apparently we're huge.
also just the advancement of the field itself
Yeah.
So
it's
it
a
was a much
confluence
more-
of factors, but
Yeah.
at the same time,
and the war
it's-
itself
It's
really
a success
uplifted
story of
medical
government spending. No one ever talks about government when it fucking works. All we ever talk about is when it fucks up.
because it's more fun to complain.
True.
Well,
I mean, that's
think
kind of
all
what
right,
our show's
okay,
about.
It was grants to expand the nursing programs, and then you also had a giant world war that made it really, really necessary to have a lot of nurses. I can see why that gets overlooked.
Yeah.
Nurses and proper MDs. It was.
But yes,
Anyone in the
Same
medical
point.
field.
Same point.
Yeah.
You had a government.
It was government grants to educational institutions to expand their facilities to bring in more students.
Yeah.
But what I'm taking away here is that because of the lack of communication, there was really no concerted effort to stall this for the first
Early
about
on.
year.
Probably
9
early
months?
on. I would say when the second wave hit and it became obvious.
Which was about 8-9 months in from what you said.
More like 3 or 4 months into the end.
okay.
Because the
First
the
wave
one-
was really quick.
Yeah, the first wave was a couple of months, and then it almost immediately it jumped into the second wave, and then almost
Okay.
immediately in the third wave, which is why we talked about there was no lag time between the
Right,
three
okay.
waves.
I was under the impression that this had started early in 1919, and the second wave didn't hit till the fall.
No, like I said, spring, summer 1918, summer, fall 1918, winter 1918, 1919.
Right,
Is the three
right.
are your 3 waves. Treatments, obviously, the vaccines for this.
I'm sure
medical-
they treated it like the flu.
You had no vaccines, no antibiotics were still.
Basically, they told you to wash up, and soap was not what it is today.
What they refer to as
Animal fat.
non-pharmaceutical interventions, including isolation, quarantine, good hygiene, disinfectants, limitations on public gatherings,
Drink the
apply-
bleach.
um,
Don't drink the bleach.
which were, as they put out there, they were applied unevenly, different locations had different rules and enforce them in different degrees.
It's what your local doctor
They
told you to
told
do.
you cover your mouth and nose, wearing masks.
San Francisco, California instituted very stringent public safety measures at the start of the second wave when things were getting bad.
How so?
Public mask mandates, public quarantine mandates, what we would now call social distancing guidelines.
Yeah.
About a month in, they were completely abandoned because people were just complaining and ready to riot in the streets because apparently we haven't grown at all as a society.
Weren't you saying something about that location being where there was a group that called themselves like an army or a brigade?
The anti-mask brigade, yup.
Yeah,
yep.
well,
About a week after mandates went into effect, there was a formalized organization in opposition to mask mandates. People just convinced that you can't tell me what to do with myself. There's not even an argument to be made about the spread of germs because none of these people have a concept of
they
germs.
didn't know at that time, so
not,
that wasn't part of it.
The common knowledge wasn't there. Like
it was merely a "you can't tell me what to do" mentality.
Yeah, telling people to wear a scarf, they're just like, "Fuck no, fuck you. It's hot. I don't wanna."
Yeah, back then. The spreading of information was more difficult.
Cutting holes for their tobacco pipe, shit like all shit that was memes at the start of Corona. They was doing it.
Just straight up peak and
I will say this much that is actually optimistic for like the people of those days as compared to now. Like for every town and like city that failed spectacularly to protect its citizens, like in every state you can name an example of a town that went into like full militant lockdown, blockaded the road in and out of their town. The sheriff enforced this shit with a rifle. You want to come in our town, you gonna wear a mask and you gonna go when you're done, and if you don't, click.
Well, yeah, because enforced unevenly. That means for every town that was ignoring it, there was one that was taking it hyper seriously.
I applaud the ones that actually took it seriously because when you look at the death tolls from those towns versus the ones that were laissez-faire about it,
all right. Well, you got to remember though, context matters here. As you say, they were laissez-faire about it.
It's like my views on shooting Pinkertons. Do I think you should ever shoot another person? No. But if you're gonna shoot another person, aim for a Pinkerton.
Well, there are no more Pinkertons.
Yes, there are. They still exist. The Pinkerton Agency is absolutely still a thing, and they're still busting unions. They are absolutely super still a thing, and I'd totally be willing to do an episode about them because, I
wouldn't be against talking about the Pinkerton group.
All right. Anyways, point I was going to make was just because it worked and it working doesn't mean that their motivation for doing it was coming from a logical, well thought out, set of following the scientific data.
They are fighting crazy with crazy, and I'm willing to join that fight.
I would imagine a lot of that was simply because by the time you're getting all these deaths, paranoia.
Yeah, we don't know who you are or what you're carrying. Get out of our town.
Yeah. People were doing shit like that in the Middle Ages, back when they thought it was God doing it.
Right.
So
no, that is
you're
never
not
changed.
wrong. I'm just saying I have more in common with the guy with the rifle being like, "Get the fuck out of my town," than I do with the guy who's like, "I'm just gonna do what I want and I don't care how it affects anyone else."
Of course, those guys with the rifles in the town, I can imagine a lot of them were being very selective about who they decided was the problem.
I'm sure they weren't. I'm sure that I would have nothing in common with them and I wouldn't like them as people.
I was saying, be careful when you relate yourself to those people.
It's like how I'm not faulting people for storming the Capitol. I'm faulting people for being irresponsible enough to let others get killed doing so.
There are not good people on both sides.
No, there aren't, but I'm not going to say that civil unrest is an invalid form of protest.
It is when what you're protesting is based entirely on a fabricated lie that you should know better.
No, they're fucked for 1,000 other reasons. I'm not going to criticize methodology. I will criticize everything fucking else.
See, I'd criticize that methodology as well.
Well,
but we're not talking about that today.
You say that till you're on the side flipping the cop car.
We're not talking about that today.
It's not a question of tactic. It's a question of
No, that's exactly my point. I'm not
when-
criticizing
when-
the tactic.
Okay.
when such tactics
Okay.
are viable or permissible. That's the question. Anyways,
Yeah, well, we're supposed to be talking about the flu
we talked
today.
about the
It's
treatments.
the last day. To break the illusion, it's over, folks. It's over. We're on the last stretch.
We have an hour and 13 minutes.
Oh, it feels so good.
And now you know when we're recording.
Yes. To the Trump administration, in case any of you were just blindly unaware of what we were talking about.
That's the only thing happening in America. That's the only
Well,
thing that's
we don't know
been
when
happening for 4 years.
Well, we don't know when they're watching the video.
We also
so.
don't know where they're watching the video.
True. Or if they're even watching them, maybe listening
hi,
on SoundCloud.
everybody.
There is a way to pull that up on analytics. I just haven't gone digging deep enough.
I was looking into it the other day, yeah.
But
All that aside,
yeah,
though.
we talked about the treatments they did, the stuff they did that worked. Given the haphazard nature of the era, they did some ideas were going around that didn't work.
I'm quite sure.
Couple of my favorites I put on here because there were plethoras.
Can I just say one? And I'm sorry if it steals one, but my favorite treatment for all of this, because I've never heard of it anywhere else.
Is it one of those three?
Nope.
All right.
Can I say mine?
Then go ahead and say
Yes.
it.
Beef tea.
Beef tea.
Beef tea. I
Beef
don't
tea.
know what beef tea is. I wasn't brave enough to look into that. I was much happier with the mystery of the fuck is beef tea.
It sounds like you put beef in your boiling water until it takes the flavor.
See,
Yeah.
no. I'm thinking it's dried pieces of like beef fat or beef tallow in a tea bag with leaves, and then you put it in the hot water.
That sounds disgusting.
so that you have a brothy tea.
I mean, I can understand if it was essentially just beef broth.
Yeah, could be.
The same way we do chicken noodle
I
soup.
don't think it's broth. I think there is a tea component here,
All right.
but I think it's
But
a pre-prepared
to
product.
To your point, though, I think that was one I saw myself.
Beef tea.
Beef tea, or just any type of tea.
Yeah,
I think it's just
it
kind of a
sounds like
cure-all.
a process
in a lot
of
of
Would you
times.
like
Drinking
milk and
beef
sugar
au
in your
jus.
beef tea?
Beef au jus.
Uh,
Just mainline that shit.
I'm not opposed to
Uh,
this.
all right, the ones I found were cinnamon. A lot of people were going around thinking cinnamon.
Like, as in just eat cinnamon and it'll help you.
Okay, there is actually a thing to this. I believe it's a tablespoon of cinnamon per day would actually clear the sinuses, so it would actually help with breathing. But
Okay.
you'd have to like choke down that much cinnamon, which is almost impossible.
Oh, no,
But, like,
I've
yeah.
seen the
you
cinnamon
remember the cinnamon-
challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little less than that amount of cinnamon, and you have to like basically take it straight. It does
Well, the
work.
trick
it's
is
a
you don't
folk
do it
remedy.
all in
like
one.
it's a symptom treatment. It doesn't fix anything, but
Yeah.
you'll feel better.
Right.
another one, which is probably my favorite, moonshine.
Moonshine. Just drink that
Moonshine will
flu
clear
away.
you up.
You know, I can't completely disregard that.
Yeah, no, shine works.
At the very least, you probably feel better for a while. Anyway.
There is nothing
Well,
so
okay.
sterilized as
Here's-
the inside of a
Here's the
moonshine
thing.
bottle.
If you're sick and you accidentally drink your loving moonshine, that's gonna be a problem. If you accidentally drink your fighting moonshine, that's gonna be a problem. You need relaxing moonshine, not party shine. Not party shine, mind you. Relaxing shine. Porch shine.
Noted.
Yeah, the jug with the X's on the front, that shine.
Well, they all got X's.
Is it the number of X's?
I mean, sometimes.
Yeah.
It's mostly which one I grab when I'm filling.
All right.
And always trust the scumble.
The third one I have is actually is the inverse. A lot of people got to thinking theory went around that aspirin was causing it worse.
There was a
Okay.
supply of tainted aspirin in the U.S. at the time, which fueled the rumors.
Oddly enough, though, it was probably actually the opposite. That it was taking aspirin probably actually helped your symptoms, helped treat it.
Well,
There was also a high probability of aspirin overdose, and it fueled anti-German sentiments at the time because Bayer is a German-owned company.
interesting.
Bayer's German subsidiaries during World War II actually helped produce and develop Zyklon B.
Did not know
Gotcha.
Yeah, they are partially responsible. They're not. It's not on them, but they had a
Yeah.
finger in that pie.
I'm not familiar with Zyklon B.
That's the gas they used in the chambers to.
Oh,
In the
gotcha.
Holocaust, yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Because I know.
I didn't know what it was called.
That's the
no,
one that. All right,
normal people shouldn't know that word. It
Yeah.
doesn't come up.
All right, correct me if I'm wrong here. I know there were two versions of Zyklon they used. I forget which ones they were. One of them was the one they used. It was a pre-existing thing that was used for other shit that they tested out. The second one was the one they developed specifically for that.
I do believe that's the one Bayer has a finger in.
Is the B is the one that they developed at? There was A and B, not B and C.
I believe the later one is what Bayer actually helped develop because
Okay.
I do believe it was based off of an existing patent, a DuPont patent, I believe.
Don't quote us,
All right.
folks. We are using the word believe. We are not looking
Yes.
at facts
Oh,
right now.
I know for a
Yeah.
fact Bayer helped.
Yeah, well, we were talking about which one it is, though. We don't know.
There
yeah.
were German subsidiaries of almost every company you can think of. Kodak had German subsidiaries.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola had German subsidiaries. Fanta is a Nazi product because they didn't have enough sugar to make Coke.
Yeah.
There are holdovers from this. It is
Alright.
just a thing.
All right, so unless you have anything else, I'll go into final numbers.
I mean the big thing that really just struck me and I was truly shocked by is that the medical community, when braced with something that they weren't prepared for and didn't fully understand, gave basically the same instructions that we as Americans all received for trying to deal with the spread of the coronavirus. And it seems like we did better this time.
Oh, yeah.
Overall, it seems like we did better getting
Better
people
communication
to
is a
understand.
lot of that.
But
I think a lot of that is better communication.
better communications, better medical technology, better everything, pretty much.
But I think we went from a failing grade to a D. And yeah, D is credit, but in my house, a D was not a passing grade.
All right, you also have to remember, though, what are we comparing it to? If you're comparing it to other pandemics, right?
Let's compare it to the bubonic plague.
Well, it's one of those things. I don't have another good modern comparison, and there's a lot
Because
of
there
air
aren't-
between these.
there aren't
There
a
really
lot.
aren't
This
any.
is the first one since 1918 that has risen to this level.
Yeah.
There've been other things that have technically classified as pandemics, including flu pandemics, but they've never been
Yeah,
this
Well,
bad.
and even before
I don't-
1918, you hadn't seen something like this for a couple of hundred years, I believe.
On that
It's one
scale,
of those things.
yeah.
My
Yeah.
judgment's relativistic, and I don't have a great yardstick here. I just don't.
And this was probably the best handled pandemic, odd as it is to say, up until that point. Simply because prior to that,
New Zealand proves that this can be done. New Zealand.
I'm not
proved it.
talking about ability. I'm talking about comparing it to what was done before. I'm putting
Well,
context.
theoretically, we should continue to do a better job every
True.
time we
Well,
run
my
into
point
this.
is,
We're supposed
he
to
made-
learn from shit
he
in
made
our
the-
past.
He made the point about learning from your past. Well, what our past is
It really sucked.
all right, the last time they dealt with this, they didn't have antibiotics, they didn't have vaccines, they didn't have modern medicine, they didn't have modern telecommunications.
Yep.
Prior to that, the last time something like this happened, I think they were
Everybody died.
They were still bleeding people as a method of treatment.
Yes.
Medicine.
Leeches.
They didn't have the technology to
Believe
even
it or
know
not-
what to
Believe
do.
it or not,
Yeah.
bleeding's actually coming back for select conditions because they found there is actual fringe benefit in low enough amounts.
in certain cases, but
Yeah.
but it's based on actual science now.
Medical leeches are a thing too.
I know they
Yeah.
are, and
They have a natural anesthetic, they have a natural numbing, and they're excellent at preventing
Well,
clotting.
there are reasons those things became things in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
It's just
there's
back then,
also reasons they stopped being
well,
things.
they got
Well,
applied
well,
to
well,
everything,
they
not
found
just
like
what they
breed
worked
super
on.
leeches that could do the job like excellently.
So
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Yep.
I'm not seeing any crap. I think we're good. I'm just being paranoid.
all right. Yeah. And so prior, other than this and what's going on now, any other pandemic, you're talking about a time when they didn't even know what was causing the disease or how it was spreading.
Oh no! Oh,
So we really only have two major data points to compare.
that's just it. I can't feel optimistic when even armed with all this new knowledge, we came up with a similar, if not identical, response, and people still fought it.
Yeah.
Well, you got to remember. You also got to remember, though, like, and we made this point too, because it hasn't happened in so long. It is not something that is part of our consciousness or our culture to behave in that manner.
You lose cultural memory after 2 generations. No, I'm
People
right there
are
with
not.
you.
People are not brought up or do not live in a world where it is normal to behave the way we've had to behave. And when you very suddenly, in the course of a couple of months, start demanding people alter their behavior in ways that are
Way
not
of
just
life.
drastically uncomfortable, unusual, and have real, tangible, practical negative consequences, you're gonna get pushback. That's just because human beings are human beings.
Well, I think there's also a level to it, at least for the U.S., and I'm only going to speak to the U.S. because I only live in the U.S. and I only deal with people from the U.S. It's all I have for sample size meaningfully. I think there's something in our culture about this idea of ultimate freedom where everything is supposed to be your choice and it has to be a choice or somehow it's tyranny.
Everything is acceptable. Nothing is taboo.
I think there's something destructive in that, and I think it's something that we keep ignoring.
Very
and
much
it's
so.
big events like this that highlight the flaw in this mindset, be it seems like we never take anything from it. And I could just being a pessimist.
That's because you have other societies that are very much if the authorities tell you to do something, you follow it because that's the rule. Those societies have produced Imperial Japan and Nazi Italy, or not Nazi Italy, Nazi Germany. One of the reasons
it did
China.
produce fascist Italy. You do have a point.
Well, mostly though,
And it produced
the cultures in Germany and Japan, one of the reasons those countries were susceptible to those sorts of extremism is because the culture was very much you listen to your parents, you listen to the authorities, you don't question authority. That was very much ingrained in the society before any of those groups came to power. That's part of how they were able to. That was something they were able to exploit.
I'm not trying to make a anti-choice or anti-freedom argument. Far from it. It's that I'm questioning this idea of absolute freedom, either A, being attainable, or B, even if it is, being a good thing.
Well, yeah, anything taken to an extreme is bad, and that's in a case of it being
and
taken
that's
to
why
the
we
extreme.
fight over the line of what is good and what is bad.
Where
That's
is the
why we
line?
have politics, because we have to draw a line somewhere, and deciding where that line is supposed to draw, everybody comes at a little bit differently.
Yeah,
That's called
and we will.
politics.
You gotta, we try to avoid modern politics on this program as a general rule, but in this particular case,
We're a bit bubbly
the
today,
the
folks.
pandemic
Sorry.
response in this country was so linked to everything at the federal level.
It got
it's impossible
It got
not to.
It got politicized. The act of wearing a mask became it wasn't about
A
whether
political
it was
standing point.
Yeah, it wasn't
Well,
whether it was good for you or
I've
not.
even-
It was
I've
a
even
political
had thoughts
statement.
It's weird that we record without wearing masks. It's one of those things, though. Like we take
For
a
sound
measured risk
issues,
on
we
this.
have to.
But
Also, before
And it
this,
is a
we
really
were all
weird
working at the
thing.
same place. So
true,
Yeah.
and when we're outside of here, we are all relatively contained. We don't go
dude,
out all
I
over the
interact
place.
with nobody at my new job. I'm just in a booth by myself all day.
The group around this table is the only ones I don't wear a mask
Yeah,
around.
we all are here, work, home. That's basically it.
Yeah.
And when
Even when I have to do dinner with the family, we spread out and we're all spaced around my house,
Oh,
kind of talking from room to room.
For that for family dinner at my house.
Yeah, and
It's
and when we're at
Three
work,
children's, four
we
adults.
mask up, we socially distance,
Exactly.
we take the proper precautions, and like you said, we are
I live
together
in my basement
anyways.
at home. I'm well away from everybody.
Yeah.
So
Yes, you
If one
are
of us
not
gets
wrong,
in-
though. It is a little weird,
Yeah.
although in some of our early Corona era episodes from Season 2, you guys can see that I do actually have my mask sitting on the table, and I do actually have a mask sitting on my mic stand here. But we do not wear them for, yeah.
I was in public
Yes.
before I came.
we do
We all do, in fact,
actually
have
wear
masks.
normally.
We just don't do it while recording.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, this was always about public safety, and the fact that anyone found a way to warp it into something else is flabbergasting. I don't think it's
Yeah.
ever going to be a comfortable thought to me. I think it's always going to
If
be
this had
jarring.
happened, if this had happened 4 years earlier or 4 years later, we'd probably be looking at a very different response
Oh,
because
very
of
much.
the political dynamic in place.
But I think my main takeaway from this is, as far as the pandemic went, we've grown a lot during our current one, just not enough.
Yeah, it's not.
We've
it's not
learned
perfect,
we just
and we're not the only ones. Italy had issues early on.
a lot
Britain
of the world
still has
had
issues. Sweden didn't even try at all.
New Zealand proves it's handleable. New Zealand proves it can fucking
Alright,
be done.
Well, you also got to remember though, New Zealand is a relatively small, low population, low density
To
country.
my understanding, they're still allowing tourism. People are still coming and
Yeah.
going.
Well, my point is they have a much easier situation to deal with than we do.
Yeah.
They don't have New York City, Chicago, L.A., Houston.
I'm just going to say New Zealand is one of the most popular destination spots on the planet, and they're still receiving reduced but decent traffic. I think it really speaks to what they're doing on the ground.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, apples and a slight case of apples and oranges here.
It's all fruit to me.
It's it's when you have a very low population, low
Or like
density
oranges or
area,
coconuts.
it's a lot easier to deal with.
Do you want to burn them or should I?
No
If I'm gonna do-
disintegrations, damn it.
That's not this episode.
Board's wiped clean, bitch. We're off.
Yeah. If I'm gonna burn him, I'm gonna do it in a much more auspicious occasion. Although it is the end of the Trump presidency.
Oh wait,
Light
no.
the
Do you
candle?
want the double shotgun lighter I keep in the car?
Yes.
So
After the podcast.
do we have anything left to say about the flu? Now, because of the way it was handled, it just kind of went away.
Kind of, sorta.
I mean,
I mean,
it didn't
you
just-
said there weren't any vaccinations or
it
things
burned
like
itself
that.
out. It burned. I do have some numbers here. It's kind of a final picture.
Yeah.
What
What did herd immunity actually accomplish?
What did this look like?
Yeah.
When a virus has to just run its course. You had
Looks like
approximately
2020.
well,
Badoom.
2020 would be. They wish they had
That's the
2020.
point.
The total infection rate worldwide was approximately 500 million. The world population at that time was about 1.5 billion. So it's about a third of the planet got it
Okay.
at one point or another. 1 out of 3 people.
That is pretty significant.
The number of dead of that 500 million, 50. 10% died of the disease or of associated
50
reasons.
million total dead.
50 million out of the 500. 10%.
It is the single largest killer as a pandemic of any recorded disease. It is the big daddy of them all.
Certainly in the
Yeah.
modern era. There are a couple things in
10% of the
ancient-
people who got it. That's if 1 out of 3 people got it. 1 out of 10
raw
of those
numbers.
died from it.
I believe, as Alan was about to point out, there are historic plagues that wiped out proportionately more of the global population.
Certainly proportionally and in terms of raw numbers. There are a couple of things, I don't have hard data, but which I probably should have looked this up, but there are a couple outbreaks that happened in ancient China
Okay.
Which
Everything I saw referred to it as the largest.
It could be, but there are
Okay.
some ones in ancient
I
China
remember
that
a flood
killed.
that wiped out everyone except one family.
There's at least one that killed.
I will burn you like a witch at the stake.
They killed at least tens of millions of people, and that was a much higher portion of the population back then, obviously. But there are ones that rival it from ancient China, and I think mostly from ancient China. Just the one area, the one part. It was the one part of the
China, God's disease lab.
Well, it's the one part of the world that had a big enough population to rival modern numbers.
Right.
If anything, this is just a testament to like how strong the Chinese are as a people. Like, wow,
They
all
keep
these
bouncing
diseases, and they just keep kicking its ass.
Well, I
Yep.
mean, no, there were diseases that had higher or as high a percentage death rates, in other parts of the world. It's just they had lower populations, so they had lower raw numbers.
Oh yeah, no, and there are
Yeah.
absolutely sicknesses that wiped out entire small communities that were never properly documented.
Yeah,
There are
well,
things
I mean,
that were lethal and just disappeared.
We said here this infected 1/3 of the world population. The Black Death killed between 1/3 and 1/2 of the population of Europe,
Right.
depending on exactly where you live.
Proportions, there were bigger casualties, but in terms of raw numbers, this was huge.
It killed more
because of the number of people we have.
Probably the most important, the biggest number you can compare it to is this killed more people than the war. This killed more people than World War I.
More people than the war that was currently going on.
More than the dawn of trench warfare, arguably the worst and most lethal form of human combat that's ever been devised.
Yeah.
Fucking gas attacks and shit, man.
Actually, that 50 million number, the death worldwide, that is the commonly stated number. There are some areas of research that indicate that because of the complexities of knowing who died specifically of the
There's a
flu,
range
or a
there.
flu-like disease, or who died of things that were brought on by the flu or whatever, the number could be as high as 100 million
Okay.
dead. So, which
would be closer to 1/5 of the people that came down with it.
yeah, that's
So
one
somewhere
out of every.
between 1/10 and 1/5 of the people that came down with it died.
That is that would be one out of every 15 people on the planet died.
Yeah.
If that,
Yeah.
that's an upper bound,
it's
but that's pretty.
impossible to not be touched by it at that scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty freaking huge. Specifically for the U.S., you had 25% of the population was infected. 1 out of 4 had it, and of that 25%, about 675,000 died. I don't have the population numbers for the U.S. back then.
Right.
But it would
Still,
have been
that's
less
a
than 100.
significant amount of dead people.
675,000 out of what was probably less than 100 million.
It became common. I believe this was during the first wave, at least with dealing with military burials at the front. It actually became very common for local clergy to help the overwhelmed makeshift morgues to bury people. They would stack caskets too high and take meticulous notes as to where everyone was. Proper Christian burial and markers.
Right.
We know where the fuck you are.
But
we
they'd
are
start
very
doubling
sorry,
you
but
up.
bunk beds.
Yeah.
And it's mass graves of like 100 coffins buried in a space that
Too deep.
normally you'd see like 30 plots in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this was like Black Death level. People were
Mass
dying in their
graves.
houses, and they had to leave
It's
the
mildly
bodies there.
encouraging because like it was proper burial, the closest you could get to like it. Everybody had a coffin. They weren't just piling it in like.
I'm
cordwood.
sure there were a few
Yeah.
that died in their homes and weren't found for like a week.
Well-
until a neighbor
well,
came
no,
by and smelled
that's
something
just
funny.
Not just
that's
that.
always a thing.
Not just that. People who died in their homes, their families called the authorities, and they said, "We're sorry. It's going to be a few days. You're just going to have to leave them
You're
there
on the list, but it's gonna take a while.
because of just so
Stay
many people
home
were
from
dying."
Wednesday to Saturday between 9 and 5.
Because remember, those are averages, which means there were cases where those death tolls were reaching much higher levels.
Wow.
Like I know there's one case instance in Philadelphia, I believe it was. There was a big like convention type event or whatever, public event that was scheduled,
Because people didn't stop
and
gathering.
they told people not to show up, but they still showed up, and it became a massive, what we would call a super spreader event.
Yeah.
Philadelphia's death toll was just
You can
huge.
see it everywhere. It's not just
Yeah.
all 50 states. There was a plea from the medical establishments at the time to cancel public events, and nobody did.
Yeah.
You don't tell us what to do. I'm American.
Yeah. Or when the war came to an end.
Happened in Europe too, but less so.
When the war ended, everybody was out in the streets celebrating.
Right,
That was
right.
That was in November.
I remember seeing video, or not video, but like still photographs and stuff of the parades and shit when people came home, and I never knew that was in the middle of a pandemic.
Well, not just in America, just in anywhere.
Oh, no, I'm just
but-
saying though, to our own countrymen,
Yeah.
America do love a victory.
Well,
Everybody.
Mission
guess-
accomplished, y'all.
I guess I never lined up those two events and realized that all of those pictures of everyone partying in the street was in the middle of a pandemic.
Yep.
Yeah. Are you sure it's World War I, not the World War II stuff?
There's a lot more World War
Yeah,
II
there's
stuff.
a lot. Most of the time when you see it, it's World War. If it's in
Okay.
color, it's World War II.
I remember black and white
Well,
stuff.
there's a lot of black and white World War II stuff.
Yeah.
True. Well, my
No,
point
I'm
is,
specifically thinking about
if
the
it was
black
color,
and white
then it would almost
pictures,
certainly
but
be.
I will be honest, I don't know which war they were from anymore.
Yeah.
It's been so many
Most
years.
likely, two is the one that everybody's got the iconic imagery of the ticker tape parades through New York and shit.
Well, and 2
Yeah.
was the one that they got that iconic picture of the guy that just grabbed some random woman in the street and kissed her.
Just there? Yeah.
Yep. I like to think they got married and he abused the fuck out of her for 30 years.
No.
And then she shot him with the 38 that he showed her how to use, and a judge ruled it was self-defense. Then she burned down the house for the insurance money and is living under an assumed name.
They've done.
That went a weird place.
They've done research on this. Best I can tell, that was basically a sexual assault. He just grabbed a random woman
Yeah,
he
he
didn't
just
know,
grabbed her,
forced her into
kissed
his
her,
Which
hands,
is why
and
my
then walked
story
away.
ends with her getting justice and a sweet new pad with
Well,
her insurance
well, your
money.
story also involved them getting married and having a relationship, and I'm just saying that wasn't there. That's basically saying
It was an
woman's
isolated
walking down the
event.
I
street.
wanted to make sure that 38 had weight.
Anyways, we were talking about death tolls here
Yeah,
and pandemics.
Exactly.
The big one is in India. The mortality rate there was 5% of the total population. 5 out of every 100 people in India died.
And India
Wow.
has always been a ludicrously populous place.
Yeah,
Yeah, not
lots and lots of people.
yeah. They still had fair number less than China back then, even in relative terms. But still, a lot of people, and I believe that's the highest
India's-
death rate.
India's always
5%
had developed
total.
cities. That's the thing. Like, India's always been
Well, it's
a
always
hub.
had concentrations of
Yeah,
population
It-
and lots of it.
the Ganges supports a ludicrous amount of
Well,
life.
Yeah.
you've also got there were a lot more, like you had Chinese workers in there at the front. Yet the Indian army played a very big role in a lot of battles. They had a lot of soldiers in Europe and in the Middle East fighting, so they were a big part of that big rotation. Plus, warm climate, warm, wet climate. That's very conducive
And
to
if you
illness.
want to
That helps
learn more,
anything
go
spread.
ahead and
Yeah.
follow our series of World War I discussions. We're gonna get to that.
Eventually.
Yeah. Oh, we will. I am.
We
the
will
big-
get to that.
I am the world's biggest World War I nerd. I had to basically use a pry bar to get these guys to go along with that
I'm
series
not
of
much
discussion
of one.
videos.
I'm going to beat you with a pry bar if you go so long we never get to my part on the next one.
Oh, we'll get there. We will get there. We may be
Fucking better.
we may be old and gray and retired,
Oh, God.
but we'll get
We'll
there.
get there eventually. And I think that neatly wraps us up. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. You can find us on our SoundCloud that we're normally on. YouTube now. Go check us out there. And our Twitter.
Twitter.com @InfoConfused.
Thanks for listening, everybody. I'm Ben.
I'm Alan.
And I'm Nick. Have a nice day.
There's a little garage on a small town street. I like to meet my friends there every week, and I know we'll talk about some facts and things. history and science and some crazy shit. Talking it out with Alan, Ben, and Nick, and I know that it's gonna be a weird ass show. Ooh, insanity abounds. Ooh, the world is spinning round. Now we're gonna break it down.